Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Time for another live stream. It's been a while. I think the last time I did a live stream was BTC just over 20K, which was only a month ago, but feels like forever ago. And so we will be kicking it off here. We'll be looking at the charts. We'll be talking ETH, all-time highs, and what is going on with Bitcoin, what is going to happen next, some levels to be looking at, and then of course we'll spend some time looking at any names that you guys want to look at. Also spend some time looking at the stock market. So let's give it a few and let some more folks join, and we will get to it in 1 or 2 more minutes. All right. We got some folks coming in. Hello, everyone. I'm gonna check out the comments here. Why don't we get started with some names, tickers that you guys want me to take a look at here. I'm gonna basically cover the big names, of course. I'm gonna look at BTC. We'll look at some of the time frames, near-term action, as well as the higher time frames. I'm gonna look at ETH, of course. Got a few other names. We'll cover Litecoin. We'll cover just a few of the DeFi names that definitely must be watched. Link, yep, everybody wants to talk Link, and a few other names that I've got on my radar, but I'll definitely let you guys throw out some names there. So appreciate the comments and the likes already. Thank you guys. We'll look at Neo. You know, Neo, along with some of the other Asian names, Ontology, even Quantum was kind of making a move the other day. We'll look at Tron. So we'll look at a handful of those that go together. So let's see here. Why don't we just start getting to it, because I intend to keep this stream a little shorter than usual. So definitely not the hour-long ones. Hopefully, famous last words. But we'll keep this one a little bit shorter. So let's start with the big names first. So what is going on? What's happening with BTC, with ETH? New all-time highs. Finally. Jeez, took you long enough, ETH. And what are the time frames that I'm looking at here? So with Bitcoin first, right? So let's start with the big name, because Bitcoin's going to lead the market here. This consolidation was due, well overdue, and it's been super healthy, to be honest. I mean, it's just kind of been in this tightening range. If we go to the 4-hour charts here, and I'm on the Binance chart, we could look at any of the major exchanges. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. But you can see here the consolidation. Obviously, everybody's noticed this, but just kind of getting real narrow, forming a bull pennant, right? So on the daily time frame, this is a bullish continuation pattern normally, right? And I say that with a little bit of caution, because when I look at the daily chart, when I look at the 4-hour chart, all looks well, right? It's had this huge rally. It needed to consolidate. And remember, consolidations generally happen, well, not generally, they always happen one of two ways, or a combination of these two, right? The first, obviously, is price, right? You get price pullback after a big run up. The second is time, meaning, price just kind of sits sideways for a little bit, consolidates, lets the move be digested, essentially. And more often than not, what you end up getting is a combination of the two. Now, my preference, to be honest, is the price consolidation. I would much rather see this giant move up and then the quick snap back, shake everything out, and then just slowly start kind of grinding its way up. Generally, you don't get it so quickly that way. It tends to be the other way around, where you get this drawn out consolidation, kind of some sideways action, a little bit of a pause, the chop zone, if you will. And then sometimes you get that kind of final washout that sees everything kind of shake down, and then it pops back up. So that's what I'm looking out for here, to be honest. Now, don't misread me, right? So there's two time frames to look at. If you're looking at the very long term, the hold time frame, the long term investments, I'm very bullish. I mean, we are clearly in a new upswing, a new market cycle. Very bullish. Same goes for ETH. I'm looking at things here near term. When I say near term, I'm talking about like the next 1 to 2 weeks, around there. So just kind of keep that in mind when I talk about this. Now, near term, looking at some of the price action, if we go to the weekly charts, when I look at the 4-hour, the daily, everything looks just fine. But then when I look at the weekly charts, I'm hesitant. And when I say hesitant, I've had some money on the sidelines that I'm looking to deploy. I've been looking to add some more. And again, for those of you that are looking for the longer term approach, my opinion, my strong opinion, is you would be better off just doing some dollar cost averaging, figuring out what you want to invest, and then try not to time the markets, right? You just kind of a little bit here, a little bit there, save some for the dips, that sort of thing. And over the longer run, that's just a much better, much saner strategy than trying to be glued to the charts and timing the markets. That being said, I've had some on the sidelines that I've been waiting to deploy, and I'm not comfortable doing that when, you know, the short-term indicator or the near-term indicators are, you know, just way overbought, right? The weekly was like high 90s RSI, the MACD was up there at one point. The daily RSI was, you know, 90 or so again. And I was just like, I can't see myself plugging more money into the market at this point. And so I was waiting for one of two things, either a sideways consolidation to let things kind of cool off a little bit, or that big dip. Now, we have seen a dip, a sizable dip, to be honest. And, you know, if we look at the different price points here, so if you look at the peak, the all-time high that we saw here, basically just, you know, 41.9 or so in that around there, just call it 42 for simplicity's sake, right? Peak to peak, that wick we saw here, right? This is only a matter of 4 days. You saw a dramatic 27% drop. Most people just shook it off. It wasn't even that big of a deal, to be honest. And that's because we had just come off of this 100+ rally, and everybody's in the profits. So, hey, what's a little 20% off the paper profits? No big deal. Unless you were the one buying near the top, and then, yeah, that probably shook you out. But then we've seen this little consolidation. Now, what I'm looking at is as this range starts to tighten, I'm still going back to that weekly chart going, you know, it's not quite juicy enough for me just yet. What would get me in? Well, one would be a break higher after this sideways consolidation. At this point, I'd say, okay, let's start adding here again. Or this pullback. Now, the levels that I'm watching are, as you guys know, I follow the EMA pairs, the 10 and the 22. And so I'm looking at that zone in between there. And so I'd like to see a touch of that 10 EMA, and ideally a little bit further down, maybe just somewhere halfway in between these two levels. Now, when you look at the price, the 22 EMA is way down here at 22K, 21K. I don't think we're going to get there personally. We could, anything could happen, but I don't think so. I would expect that we'd see a little bit of chop and then maybe a dip. If it does break down, a dip further down, right, to sub 30 levels, which is what I would like to see personally. And then I could be a little bit more aggressive in my buys at that point. Now, I'm still holding the longs that I've been long. This is accumulation is what I'm talking about here. So places to add more is what I'm looking for. Now, if you zoom out, right, like RSI is still up there, but it at least has come down a little bit. So I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable there. The daily is certainly within range, so I'm definitely comfortable in the daily. It's just more the weekly EMAs that I'd like to see either flatten out a little bit or catch up some more, because certainly they've gotten extended, right? Price has gotten extended from there. And so that's my rationale right now. As I mentioned, and a lot of people were calling this out, right? As soon as Bitcoin decided to take a breather and pause, consolidate a little bit, the altcoins were going to have a rally, and that's exactly what we saw. Now, I honestly expected ETH to hit all-time highs much sooner than it did, but that's okay because there was some fantastic trades in many of the other names. The DeFi space has been probably the strongest and has, I mean, we've seen a lot of the names that I'm holding have 100%ed just in the last month or the last couple weeks, to be honest. So there certainly was that altcoin, I don't want to say season, that's just such an overused term. And it wasn't broad-based, as many of you guys have already pointed out, right? It's a handful of names, handful of sectors. It's not this across the board, every alt. You know, there's times where the altcoin market is just so strong, it's a matter of when, not if, your name breaks out. I don't think we're there yet, personally. I think that's late stage stuff. Right now, you still got to be a little bit more choosy around which sectors you pick. No doubt DeFi is probably the hottest, if not one of the hottest names right now, or sectors right now. But some of the platform names, the cross-chain, interchain type things are also very strong. So we'll look at some of those names here shortly. But in the meantime, right, I'm thinking, okay, we get this altcoin rally during this season, but now in my opinion, it's time to wait. Bitcoin is going to make a decision here very soon in the next couple of days, and whichever way it ends up going will lead the rest of the market. That's just the way it is because of the dominance that it has, the significance that it has. And I'm, if I had to say it, I'm probably slightly more bearish near term. Okay, near term, don't misunderstand me, but I'm slightly more on the bearish side than I am on the bullish side until proven otherwise. And by that I mean I'm still looking for a little bit of a shakeout then that will then kick off things after that. So here's what I'm looking at. The key levels to be watching on Bitcoin near term on the 4-hour chart. If you're trading the shorter term time frames, you don't want to see it get below 34K. A close below 34K starts to break this near-term support that it's been building out here for the last day or two. And I think at that point, you see a pretty quick drop down to this level here, which is around that 31, 32 mark. Not a big move from where we're at now, but what I'm thinking might happen is if it does give up that level, then that translates into a little bit of a bigger move on the daily chart. And you can see here on the daily chart, so far, let me zoom in here for you guys. The pullbacks have not closed beneath that 22 EMA on every attempt. There was a quick shakeout that went below it briefly, but it was a strong buyback. And then the daily close never got below that $33, $34 or 34K mark. And so that's the key level to be watching on the daily chart as well as that 4-hour chart. Much below 34K. If it starts to hang out on the other side of that line, then I think you finally get that shakeout. And how far do we go to the downside? I'd be using the weekly chart as those first key levels. So the 10 EMA on the weekly puts it at around 28.5. That's where I have some near-term buys, orders waiting. And then I have, kind of anywhere in between there as, in my opinion, great areas to look at it. Below that, you can do some fib retracement levels. You can look at support levels on the daily chart. That would put you at 29 and then 25 if you got that low, but I'm not necessarily gonna project any downside action. I'm gonna be more looking at not necessarily specific price levels, but I'm gonna be looking at more price action, right? So if I do see a shakeout below that, if it gets climactic, if you start to see a little bit of capitulation down at the lows, it's gonna be one of those kind of front run the dip, if you will, and that's because those buys are going into the long-term bag, not necessarily trade. For trading, I don't ever front run the dip. I just wait for it to play out and then I'll start buying when it looks like it's over. So a little bit of different mentality there, but that's what I'm looking at near term. If you're trading it from a BTC perspective, I think it's in no man's land and it's just a matter of wait until it decides to show its hand. So 34K on the downside, that'd be a breakdown. On the upside, at least on the 4-hour chart for the trading side of things, if you get back above 38K, things look really positive. It's not an official break of this pattern until it clears this 39 and change level, but I think that 38K would be an early signal that it's going to start moving higher. So right now, kind of just sitting in no man's land on the short-term time frames. and everything is starting to really get tight and narrow here. So it's one of those wait till BTC does its thing. Looking at ETH, however, ETH is finally hitting that new all-time high. It was very brief here today, kind of a few candles above it. But man, ETH is super strong here. I think ETH continues to lead the way in 2021. If you look at the ETH BTC chart, it's getting going. It's looking really strong. Obviously, it's been outperforming here in near term as Bitcoin consolidates, but it's starting to come into this resistance point. Personally, I think it breaks out, and so this is going to continue the outperformance. The big question is, does it break out before Bitcoin breaks higher, or do we see Bitcoin shake things out a little bit, put the quick pause on this, and then it gets going? So it just depends on which pair you're looking at. Predominantly, I use the USD pairs for those type of longer term holds, but when you're looking at which one's the better place to look at, you got to look at the BTC pair to see if Bitcoin or alts are going to outperform. I think ETH shows a stronger hand here going into 2021. BTC was probably the better place to be for most of the last quarter of 2020. Both were just fine, to be honest, but BTC had a slight outperformance. I think ETH is finally turning that corner. So looking for a breakout there on the ETH side. But going back to the USD pair, no doubt, super bullish, coming right up to the old high and clearing it here today. Haven't really closed above it on the daily, so that's really interesting. But I know a lot of you guys just want this rocket ship to take off. I'm with you, right? Like, it'd be fine and dandy if it just kept going up for me. But again, personally, like just looking at the weekly RSI, a little bit up there. Now, I know this is new all high territory. It doesn't necessarily apply. On my last live stream, I said that explicitly. I said, overbought doesn't really mean as much anymore when you're in a new bull market because it's new all-time highs, et cetera, et cetera. I said that, and I believe that. But I would personally like to see this thing pull back a little bit and almost form like this big kind of cup and handle. I know it's not really a cup, but, a little bit of a handle, not that deep, of course, but, a little bit of a pause, and then kind of consolidate, let these things cool off a little bit, let the moving averages catch up. That'd give it a lot more legs on the way up. And then at that point, I think you'd see very quickly, 15, 16, 1800 ETH, and probably hitting that 2K mark really quick after that. So that'd be my ideal scenario. We'll see how it plays out. It doesn't really matter either way for me, but, if it does pull back, I think that'd be a great opportunity for some of the folks looking to add or have maybe missed out on that initial move up. That might be the place to watch. So near term, ETH is a little bit tougher to look at from a price point level because it just cleared the that 1400 mark earlier, hit new highs very briefly, pulled right back. I'm more looking at the trend at this point. This lower trend continues to rise, looks just fine. The moving averages on this 4-hour time frame look just fine. Price is still holding up above. If you wanted to play it really tight, this little zone is what I'd be watching right here. If it starts to pull back below this zone, that's going to cut beneath both horizontal price support as well as this rising trend line support. So that puts you right around that 1250 mark. If it starts to close below that, if I see BTC spill over to the downside, then most likely that'll pull ETH down, in my opinion, at least temporarily. I think ETH will recover first on a dip in Bitcoin, so looking to see that play out. But hey, just planning. That's what I'm doing, is just planning. Got to have a plan for either direction. If it continues higher, if we see ETH pull above that 1450 mark, then yeah, I think you're going to see 1600 ETH here pretty quick after that. But it all kind of depends on what Bitcoin does. And right now, for me, I'm just watching this play out, and I'm thinking it's time to just be a little patient and let's let this play out, see what happens next. I think that's it on the big two names I wanted to cover here. Let me see what other names you guys wanted to look at. Cardano has been on a nice move. We'll add that to the list. We'll look at some of the DeFi names. I've got a separate watch list. I don't have all the DeFi names on there, just a small watch list, but it'll make it easier for me to cycle through some of those names. We got Pickles in the house. Who else is in the house? Got a few folks here. I'm going to take a sip of some tea here. Yeah, VeChain has been on a move. Engine. I saw the news on Engine. We'll take a look at the chart. There was some gaming approval out of Japan and all that stuff. I think the whole NFT space is definitely worth keeping an eye on. But I don't know. I mean, I have some like some NFT related stuff, but honestly, it's a small portion of my portfolio at the moment. Let's see, Atom. Could put those guys on there. Dot. Tezos. It's going to give us plenty to look at. So let's get to it because I do want to keep the stream somewhat short. Can I enable super chats? I generally don't. You know, it's a weird thing because it's something strange. If you're new to my channel and if you've not really noticed, or maybe you've been around, you've noticed, I've generally disabled any kind of like monetization features on my channel. So unless I forgot, you definitely don't see ads. I don't have a bunch of interruptions. Not that I have long videos or anything anyway. And I don't do super chats or any kind of stuff where you pay YouTube and pay me and they keep 30%. So I appreciate the support. I'll try to get through the chats as much as I can, but I try to keep this channel somewhat commercial free. But if you do want to support, you can go to nodeinsiders.com and check that out. Speaking of nodeinsiders.com, this trading bots, man, it's been long since 12.12. The 4 hour, you know, it's a little bit choppier, but that's because it's a shorter time frame. But the daily one has been really nice for the last 6 months. It caught the first swing from like 9K up to whatever it was, and then it took a break, and then it caught the breakout at 20K. It's been long since 12.12, and so, you know, don't always toot the Node Insiders horn, but I gotta admit, this last call that it did was really nice. I went long on 12.12, or was it right there? Bam! Caught another very nice upswing. I think the one before that was like in October. I went long like one of these days, and then it got choppy here, admittedly, but I mean, that's to be expected. But then that was the last long signal and caught the nice little breakout. So pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. And it's a trend following strategy for the most part. So sideways markets, it's going to get choppy. And it never gets out at the exact top, and it never gets in at the exact bottom, but it'll give you the meat of it. All right. Let's see here. What was I going to do here next? Next on the list here. Do I make TikToks? No, I don't make TikToks. I don't even have the app on my phone. Sorry to disappoint you guys. All right. Let's get back to it here. I'm going to start down the list here. I'm going to try to move a little bit quickly here. Litecoin. You know, no, not that Litecoin. Kraken. Well, I mean, Kraken's fine. It probably has enough volume for Litecoin. But let me zoom out here. I want to start with the daily chart on most of these, and then I'll zoom in. You know, Litecoin had a nice trade, and I was trading it here. And I'll admit I've unloaded most of my Litecoin position, and I'll tell you why here in a little while. But once it started breaking out, I started building it in around here, this 50s and 60 mark. Had a pretty good move, and started to scale out here around that 130 mark. Didn't sell out the exact top, no big deal. I think my last sell was around 143 or something like that. So kind of been out of it for a little bit, but it's okay. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily outperformed Bitcoin. It's held up pretty good. It was actually one of my better performers from a percentage basis. It was up, what, 200% or something like that. So from a percentage basis, it actually did better than the BTC positions that I was holding during that time frame. But not really holding a whole lot of Litecoin anymore right now. But still looking okay. I think it's going to follow Bitcoin. It's going to probably underperform in the near term if it does pull back. Looking at it from the weekly chart again, like most of these names, got a little overdone. Doesn't look quite as stretched, and certainly could continue higher. The new highs for altcoin would be, you know, over that 340, 350 mark. So has some room, not a lot of resistance. So I think it could get there personally in the longer term, along with most of these names. But that's what I'm looking at. Litecoin, BTC here real quick. Anything of interest? not a whole lot, to be honest. I mean, if it starts to get out of this range here, 0.49, 0.5, then maybe it's worth looking at again. But for now, I'm looking at other things. Link. Oh man, Link. Link was nice, right? Looking at Link BTC here, you can see the week it had last week. What a week it was. Nice little pop off the lows after putting in this base here. You can see this nice little, whoa, not there. Here we go. A little bit of a low starting to set there, holding its own versus Bitcoin, and then finally had a little bit of a pop once Bitcoin decided to do its little consolidation there. And if we go to the Link dollar pair, there was a couple of levels that were the early signals. One was basically breaking above this line. It gave you a good throwback entry. A lot of these names did. They broke out. They gave you a quick throwback. Link sunk lower when Bitcoin had its pullback down to about 12, 13 bucks. And then it was off to the races quickly up to 23 bucks, hitting new highs on Link. And right now it's just giving you a little bit of a pullback to the prior highs. Nothing to be worried about. Volume is positive. Not a lot of resistance. One of the strongest and one of the most watched names in the market right now. So I think if ETH continues higher, the DeFi space will do good. Link will do good. So definitely worth keeping an eye on here. And in fact, this little pullback might be a place to look at it. Again, everything right now, in my opinion, has kind of that asterisk behind it because of what Bitcoin's looking like. It's getting really tight. Depending on which way it breaks to the up or the downside, that'll drive a lot of these names. But if it holds above this, kind of $18 to $20 mark, very positive. I'd like to see it can consolidate from here and then get going again. But Link, definitely worth watching. What else here? While we're at it, let's just go to some of those DeFi names here real quick. In no particular order, and if the name that you want to see is not on the list, doesn't mean anything. These are some of the short list that I'm watching here. And most of these I do hold in my longer term position. So full disclosure there. Not pumping my bags, but I'm just letting you know that I do hold some of these. Uni was a beautiful setup here on this daily chart. I mean, just consolidation, very clear setup here around that $4 mark. And once it popped, it was pretty much off to the races. It did have that pullback when Bitcoin shook everything down on that slice lower. But I mean, this was a little bit of a throwback entry. And then from there, just basically went from $4 to $9, almost $10 very quickly. So has had a pretty good move already. Again, I'd like to see these pause a little bit, kind of digest this move. I mean, at this point, it's up about 100% just from that December 20th or December 29th mark. So, I mean, hasn't even been a month. At the peak was up about 136% versus BTC here. Again, also hitting that first near-term resistance, like almost on the money. And that's where the USD spot is starting to pause, lo and behold. And so I was watching this little double bottom here. I think I might have posted this one on Twitter a few weeks back, but this little double bottom here was looking attractive. That first target there was basically a run up to that prior resistance level here, and it's hit it. So now I'd like to see it kind of pause, and then if it breaks above that, not much resistance. I mean, you've got this resistance back here, but I think it gets another, at least versus Bitcoin. If it breaks above this, you got another 40-50% versus Bitcoin. And so Uni's still definitely looking good. Aave, another one that was setting up real nice here over December. You can see the daily chart just kind of consolidating around that $80 to $90 mark. And then sure enough, had that breakout, a little bit of a throwback entry. Almost all of these did. And then it was off to the races, hit $200. Beautiful. $200. Pausing right now, but new all-time highs for that bad boy. Still looking good. Versus Bitcoin, broke over that resistance I was watching, kind of holding above that. So we'll see how it plays out here. SNX, I really would like to see this one pull back. Personally, I think it's overdone. You're starting to see a little bit of divergence showing up here on this daily chart. Price is starting to rise higher. RSI is starting to wane here a little bit. Even the MACD is dipping into the red now. So I'd like to see this one pull back. Some of the levels to watch here on a pullback, if you get it, this would be a significant percentage move, but for names like this, it's not that big. Obviously the 22 EMA, so $13 on the way down. Prior support below that was around 11, but I'd like to personally see it at least get back down to here. Will you get it? I don't know. I doubt it. That's a big drop. But if you do, that'd be a level to watch. And keep in mind, like if Bitcoin does, you know, a 20% downer, these alts will do 30% plus, you know, no time, right? So it's certainly in the realm of possibility. I mean, if you're new to kind of some of these market swings, you got to have a tough stomach because some of these rises are fast and furious, and the downside could be just as quick and brutal. The good news is if it's a bull market, a longer term bull market, in due time, they recover. But you got to be able to stomach some of those big drops. But for now, hey, we're all celebrating the nice moves up. YFI looks like it's consolidating here a little bit, tracking to BTC. It's been pausing here for the last couple weeks, but again, this one is up there. Comp has started to edge out here in the last couple days. Not as strong as a performer, but broader trend since November has just been up anyway. This was one of the first names to start kind of bouncing off the lows, so still doing okay. RAN was finally moving out of range here. I was looking at RAN around 40 cents, finally breaking out and hit almost 80. So a near double in about a week and a half or so. So that one's looking all right still. But again, a lot of these names I think are due for a little bit of a pause. And then which one's this? Balancer. A little bit more choppy of a name. Hasn't been quite as strong. Let's see if it plays some catch up here. It's only been only 24% move. But you can see where it paused. Way back here was a little bit of resistance. Kind of hit that. Above that, not much resistance till about 35 to 40 cents. So see if we can get that one there. And CRV was a very nice move here this weekend. Let me zoom in on that. Again, doesn't look like it on the chart, but when you look at the price action here, once it broke out, man, that was 100% in, what was that? 3 days? 4 days? Not even that. Holy smokes, 2 days. And so, yeah, super strong. They're pulling back. It's normal because when you get a 100% move in 2 days, well, you just got to pull back a little bit. It's still well above the daily 10 EMA, pulling back to around that $1.20 mark. That'd be the first level to watch on the way down here. Maker had that super move a couple weeks back. It's just been digesting it. These moving averages are catching up, so something to watch. But I think if Bitcoin pulls back, you might see some of these retreat a little bit further. And we covered Link already here. Moving quickly here, let's see what other ones we got here. Cardano, what a nice move Cardano has been. I'll be honest, man, I missed this when I was watching it. Can't get them all. You just can't get them all. But look at that move on Cardano. That was the level to be watching. If you're watching Cardano, essentially that 17-cent mark was the level to be watching. It had a breakout on volume, which is important. So nice breakout. Good daily volume on both of those candles. Controlled, orderly pullback for about 3 or 4 days on much lower volume. Hit the moving averages, throwback entry to the breakout point, and then kaboom, off it goes. Very nice. Very nice. And I know a lot of you guys are long-time Cardano believers. Hodgkinson's fan, not Hodgkinson. You know what I mean. Charles fans. I'll say Charles. It's a lot easier. But Cardano, there you have it. Let's see here. Looking at Cosmos, a nice little move here. This was setting up for a little while, and it had its kind of starts and fits. I was watching this one, and I thought for sure it was going to get going back in here, and it was just like, yeah, just choppy as heck. But finally got going, and this was a nice little breakout over that 650 mark, and then basically hit 950 in no time. But it's still looking good. I like this one. I think it's pausing. It looks healthy right now, kind of breaking over that resistance back in here. And I think it's got more to go. A lot of these kind of interoperability type of projects with DeFi and with some of the other things going on are, in my opinion, kind of like the next platform moves, right? These cross-chain type of things. So this is definitely one to be watching. I think it does better over the longer run. It's not even overbought yet on the longer term time frames. The daily chart is doing a healthy pullback pause right now, so I think it has room to run over the longer run, especially. How does it look on the BTC pair? Yeah, nice little reversal on the BTC pair, finally breaking this long time downtrend on that pair, putting in a little bit of a low there. We were seeing a lot of these do this bullish divergence here at the lows. It was signaling that maybe the selling pressure was coming to an end, but these are always tricky. You got to wait for them to actually kind of confirm, and it has been confirming here in the last couple of weeks. So looks good. I think any kind of pullback may be a good opportunity to keep an eye on these. So Tezos looking pretty good. Or Atom, did we cover Tezos net? We didn't. Let's go look at Tezos. I'm gonna just jump around here a little bit. Tezos. I think it's a little bit of a throwback entry here. Watching this one pull back to that 280, 270 mark. Like to see it hold up there. Next big resistance on this guy, 350, and then around that $4 mark. So on a percentage basis, that's a pretty significant move if you can get it, right? So from here to 350, puts it at around a 25% move. From here up to $4, you're talking about 40+%. So definitely worth watching in my opinion. Along the same lines as what I just mentioned with Atom. Polkadot. Polkadot again was another nice one. Gave you a good throwback entry on the shakeouts. The shakeouts are always scary to buy, but if you've been watching it and you have a plan, they make it a little bit easier, but you can see, maybe hard to see on the screen there, but there's a wick that basically came all the way right down to 714. Was a beautiful throwback entry if you missed that initial pop to $10, right back down. And then after that, I mean, it was off to the races, a quick double and a triple, man, 170%. So very nice move, consolidating new high territory. Again, hot project, got a lot of attention right now. I think it's definitely worth watching. All right, let's see which ones I've covered here. Polkadot, Cardano. Let's look at VeChain. Some of you guys are asking about VeChain. And I'm going to have to catch up on the comments. VeChain, this was your breakout entry on VeChain after this break above the flag here. So you can see clear trend, lower lows, lower lows, lower lows. And then it started to kind of narrow out here, popped above. That was the breakout signal, pull back, a little bit of a throwback here. And it still looks good in my opinion. I mean, it's already had a little bit of a move, but still looks good. It's up about 24%. Hasn't quite cleared this resistance back here, but it looks like it really wants to. If you go to the daily chart here, just nice little consolidation there at the most recent highs. So I'd be watching this guy. It looks like it wants to break higher. Has room to run on the RSI, both on the daily and the weekly. So has room to run. On the weekly, admittedly, starting to get a little extended, but you know how these guys go. I mean, it was extended back here before we give you that, you know, the next 30, 40, 50%. So you get to discount that a little bit when they're in new highs. Not, you know, the overbought stuff, whether it's a stochastic oscillator or whether it's an RSI or something, carries a little bit less weight, a lot less weight, let's be honest, when it's at new high territory. All right, so that's VeChain. How's it look on the BTC pair? VeChain. Looks like we were covering this one last time. Resistance level still holds true. And yeah, I can see it breaking above here on the next leg up. So same pretty much level on the BTC pair, but at least it looks way more positive here. I mean, it's had that shakeout, higher highs or higher lows and higher highs here in the daily chart. So definitely moving in the right direction after this long pullback versus Bitcoin. Oh my God. Some of these alts, I don't know if they will ever, most of them honestly won't ever hit those old highs versus Bitcoin. If they do, wow. I mean, what a move that will be. Decentraland looking interesting here. We'll look at Engine next, but Decentraland showing some good strength here on the USD pair at least. Starting to break higher here. So a lot of these kind of NFT type of stuff. And these are, you know, I've got this one just kind of like it's an old bag. I've got some land and it's just one of those like almost forget about type of things, right? Like you hold it. If it works out, fantastic. If it doesn't, well, whatever, right? It's one of those move on to the next thing. Engine. Yeah, Engine was like, I mean, it's got a lot of momentum right now. I don't know if it's worth chasing without a pause, at least on the shorter term time frames. If you look at the longer time frame, right, this, what was it, 23, 24 cent or so was, I mean, that was the clear breakout point. You had a quick start, throwback, shakeouts, and then it really got going. At this point, you're almost wanting just to look at the shorter term time frames, 4-hour chart. When you get these little pauses like you did here, those might be good secondary entries. Definitely on the longer term time frames, you know, weekly, it's getting up there. And these smaller cap names, to be honest, like, they're tricky, right? They move up quick, but they can pull back just as quick if it's just kind of a flash in the pan move. So you just got to be a little bit more careful with these. But hey, can't complain. What a move. Nice little pop there in the last day or so. What else was I going to show you guys? Let's look at some of the privacy coins, quote unquote privacy coins. Zcash. Zcash, long time drop. On my radar right now. I do hold some Zcash, by the way, so full disclosure, I'm not going to pump my bags because not like it would matter, but no one's going to move the market just because I said. But looking at this longer term reversal that's happening, right, you can almost look at it as a weekly chart, inverse head and shoulder. It's been in pullback mode for quite some time, and then here in the last couple of months has really started to not that one there. Let me move this back. Here we go. This guy here, you know, has really started to put this consolidation here and finally showing some good action. There's a lot of volume coming in here the last couple of weeks, so definitely keeping an eye on it. If it gets back below this $75 mark, you know, $65 mark, then it doesn't look quite as good anymore. It looks like a failed attempt to break above resistance, but right now it looks like it really wants to. It's starting to edge higher. Volume's coming in. First target on this one for me, it's going to be around that 160 to 170 mark. And so that's what I'm looking at for Zcash. Not a huge percentage move from where it's at now, but not a bad move either. So, you know, it'd be a 50 to 60% move from current levels. So definitely watching that one. I like the setup here on the longer term time frames. Again, I don't think it's a quick DeFi type of move where you get 100% in 5 to 7 days, but I think it's worth checking it out. XMR, looking at the Monero, has been a much stronger name as of late. The trend is your friend. It continues higher. Moving averages are going in the right direction. First support right now is around that 130 mark. Below that, then you start looking at prior highs. So I think there's strong support around that $100 mark. That was the last kind of near-term breakout point. So I'd be watching that if it pulls back. But for now, looking high, looking good. It did pause at this prior resistance here, but above that, 250 to 270. So not too shabby. This one, you know, it's like a lot of these other names. They kind of move together. Is Dash even a privacy coin? I don't even know. they say they were, then they say they're not, and then they say they're a payment. So whatever. EOS. Did anybody ask about EOS? I totally forgot about EOS here. Here's the weekly chart of EOS. I mean, just range bound as can get. Has not participated with the rest of the markets in giving you the 100% moves to the upside. Just kind of been sitting tight here. EOS BTC does not look beautiful. Turns out, what do they call it? Block 1 holds more Bitcoin value than it does EOS. So apparently that's what they did with all of your money when they did their year-long plus ICO. They were just buying Bitcoin. But yeah, this one doesn't look too pretty. Doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too good. Looks pretty bad. But gotta wait to see if it pops. I mean, EOS is one of those, like, could it pop here quickly? It could. I would almost think, I don't know. I don't want to get political, but EOS. Let's just stick to the charts. Above 320 or so on the weekly chart, maybe starts to lead up to move to $4 pretty quick. All right, let's cycle back here. So looking at Bitcoin, back to the BTC here. For those of you joining a little bit later, there's a couple of things I want to cover on Bitcoin. Obviously, it looks, you can see the consolidation taking place right now, right? Let me go to a clear chart and I'll cycle back to that one. There's a clear upper bound that's forming here on the trend line. There's a clear lower bound that's starting to form and take place there. And it's just a consolidation that's ready to move one way or the other. I expect it'll break out of this range in the coming days. And so whichever way it decides to go, the market is going to move with it, whether that's up or down. Near term, personally, I'm hoping, and I know you want to hear this, but I'm hoping for a little shakeout. And I'm looking at the weekly moving averages for that. So sub 30K is what I'm looking for. How low after that? It's kind of anyone's guess. I don't think it'll go that low because personally, I think there's a lot of money on the sidelines waiting to buy the dip. If it breaks above 38K, then I think that's a good early signal that it's about to move over 40 very quickly. So that's what I'd be watching. So the near-term levels to be watching, let me zoom in on that 4-hour chart here. That 38K mark, and on the downside, it's got to hold above 34. If it closes on the downside of 34 on the daily, then it doesn't look too positive. And I think at that point, ETH and some of the other alts that have had nice moves will take a pause and they will see some more downside action. For now, they look just fine. ETH is moving nicely, trending higher above these moving averages after sitting tight all weekend. It was almost excruciating. It was like I would check the price and be like, oh wow, still at 1200. The next day, check the price. Wow, still at 1220. Like it was just doing nothing for a while, then finally started to get going. But looks fine. It's still holding these moving averages. So far so good. Hit new highs today. Not much resistance on the way up. But same story as with Bitcoin. I'd like to see a little bit of a pause. I have some money on the sidelines that I would like to add as well, but it's just really hard for me to see a weekly chart like this and say, let's just throw it all in at this point. I would almost just wait until Bitcoin breaks to the higher side and just buy it on the way up, then preempt it here and then just watch it pull back. So it's just one of those, like, I mean, I have some now anyway. I'm invested already. Just one of those things where I'm like, should I add here? Should I wait? I think patience is prudent in my opinion. So I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait. Let this play out. I can wait a couple days. It's no big deal. The other alts have been just fine during this time. So a lot of people have ETH FOMO right now too. And you watch it on Twitter and you see it out there, which also kind of, I'm a little bit of a contrarian when it comes to those type of things. So that's why I'm like, well, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Let me see here. Other names on the chat, and then we'll start wrapping this up because I've been going for I don't know how long. Quite some time. Let's see here. And if I didn't get to your name, I apologize. I'm looking through the notes here real quick. Oh, I said I would do Neo. Let's do some of the Asia names here. They were looking pretty strong here, still trending higher. I think that breakout point on Neo, I mean, there was two. I like to look at early resistance levels, so like the more near-term one, and then kind of the official one is there to confirm it. But, $18 swinging above that was a good entry, and then it kind of gave you a little bit of a throwback here, but then just continued higher. So hit $29. If you look left, it is breaking above this resistance. A little choppy here at that point, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. A lot of volume coming in though. Look at that. If you zoom out, you can see the spike in volume here all of a sudden. So a lot more activity coming in, much more positive when you see price moving up on higher volume. Neo BTC showing the reversal, confirming the daily chart, finally showing a 10 over the 22 EMA cross over to the positive side. So that's good to see. Need to see that price hold above that 10 EMA to continue higher, and not a whole lot of resistance until you get back in here. So has some room to run. Ontology. There we go. Ontology BTC here, getting above 70 cents or so, and you can see a quick run to about 90 cents. And that's your next major resistance point in and around that level. So definitely worth watching. Like, again, similar volume spike coming in here. Who else? Quantum. Anybody still trade these guys? Quantum. Similar price action. A lot of these names kind of move in schools like fish. Tron. Somebody said Tron hasn't moved. I noticed that too. It's like very range bound. Tron's one of those names where you just got to keep an eye on, because when it finally gets going, a lot of momentum comes in. This is the range you want to watch on Tron. 30 or 0.034 or so is the name to watch, is the level to watch. I'm not a fan of the project personally. I trade it from time to time, but it's not one of those names that I have an affinity with and will hold long term, that sort of thing. So to me, it was in the same camp as Ripple. Sorry if that offends you, but it's one of those like very nice tradable names. Not something I'm like parking long term money in personally. What else? I think I covered a lot of these here. OMG. I guess we'll go with the Finax here. Yeah, interesting zone on OMG, similar to some of these other names where the daily charts are just kind of sitting range bound. The clear resistance level on OMG here around that 440. Now keep in mind, OMG had that big spike earlier, and it likes to do those little levels and then pops, pulls back, little level. But on the weekly chart, definitely looks like it's setting up here, so I'd be watching that one for sure. But no doubt, these have not necessarily been the strongest of names as of late. The action has been more in the DeFi space, of course, in some of these interoperability names, that we just covered, Atom, Tezos, those type of names. Cardano, the platform names have been strong. So I think that's where the momentum is right now. And there's an old saying, strength begets strength. So you tend to see leadership lead, but don't write the other ones off, right? They're still setting up. If it's a true bull market phase, then eventually they all break out. It's just kind of a matter of when. Let's see here. Looking at the comments here to see what else we got. Thank you guys. A lot of 2017 watchers still hanging out, still with us. Dead cat bounces. Bullish on alts. Wait a little bit. Yeah, I would agree. I think waiting is not bad. And like I always say, like if you got the FOMO and you just can't take it anymore, I gotta get in. Save some dry powder, right? It's one of those things, like it's okay to get in, have some exposure, and that kind of goes back to the old like just average in methodology. You don't have to necessarily pick the exact bottom, the exact top. It's just one of those. If you already got some exposure and you've got some dry powder that you want to deploy, then I think maybe you wait a little bit. That's just my opinion. That's what I'm doing. I'm just gonna wait. And honestly, it's because at this point, like, who cares, right? Like, if you've been in it for this move here already, like, what's a few percent up or down if you miss it? So that's just my opinion. What else? That's probably it for now. I think what I might do next time is go into kind of like an overview of like portfolio setup for longer term stuff. Most of the time when I'm talking, it's shorter time frames, looking at trading. As I mentioned during my last live stream, the lessons from the last bull market, I'm of the opinion, and very strongly so, that you will do much, much better over the longer run during these strong bull markets if you just buy and hold through the wiggles versus trying to optimize by trading and selling a little at the top and buying a little on the dips for a number of reasons, right? One, it's really hard to do. And two, you lose, there's slippage, there's fees, there's tax implications. There's a lot of reasons, emotional, that sort of thing. And if you take more of a dollar cost average, longer term approach, when we're in a strong bull market, you tend to do much better in my opinion, than if you're kind of over trading it. So that's why I'm thinking at this point, you know, just kind of take the longer point of view, wait for those dips, take advantage of those dips, and wait for the market to go absolutely bonkers. And everybody is calling you about, should I get into crypto now? Bitcoin just hit 100,000. ETH hit X thousand. What do you think I should buy next? And it's in those moments where you're like, man, I should have just accumulated and just sat tight and waited. And so that's my strong recommendation, is to accumulate, sit tight, and wait is what I'm going to be doing versus overtrade. Now, I'll do trades, don't get me wrong, but it's a much smaller representation of the total funds than it was, say, the last few years, right? The last couple of years was definitely a trading market. The other half, you know, prior to that, you just tend to do better during those longer time bull runs. So we'll see where things shake out here in the next couple of days. For me, it's just kind of wait and see mode. 38K, 34K. Let's see which side wins next. But ETH, man, ETH's looking good. I think we'll continue to see some good stuff coming out of ETH here in the next couple of months. Oh, the one thing I did want to cover here, something to be mindful of. CME futures for Ethereum trading begins, I think it's estimated like February 9th. I'll take a look at Rook next. One thing to note on that, right? I personally would like to see a pause before that date, but it could very well just continue to run, you know, between now and then. And it probably will, to be honest. But going into that date, that February 9th date, wherever price is at that point, doesn't really matter to me. Once CME futures go live, I'm going to get super cautious, because that's going to be a great opportunity for the big money crowd to hedge and potentially short for a dip. And so that's my thoughts. Bitcoin, when they launched the CME futures way back in the day, 2017, it literally topped, I mean, to the day when those futures went live. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with ETH this time, because I think there's a lot more institutional demand that has yet to come in on the Ethereum side of things. But wouldn't surprise me if you see a strong run up and then a pause leading into that. So just something I'm going to be watching out for. That's February 9th. If we get a dip before then, a strong, meaningful dip, then it's probably going to be the opposite. I probably won't care at that point. But if we see prices just continue to run up until then, I might hedge a little bit as well. So just a thought. I wanted to share that with you guys. All right. I think that's probably it. Let's see here. Rook on Polo. Man, does anybody still trade on Polo? Does Polo still exist? I got Rook on Uniswap. We did cover Cardano. Okay. It's going to probably be it for today. For those of you that are joining late, yeah, I did cover most of the names I see being posted. Covered Tezos, Dot. We didn't cover all of them. Let's see. Zcash, VeChain, Link. Covered quite a bit. Atom. Obviously the big names. EOS. So if you missed it, those are on replay. I think we covered most of those. But yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the thoughts, for the comments, as always. Appreciate the views and the likes. And we'll see you all on the next one. Take care, everyone.